For most of the 1960s and into the 1970s, if you walked into a motorcycle dealership in Canada and asked for something built at home, the answer was Bombardier, not the snowmobile company you might picture today. Something older, something prouder. From a sprawling factory complex outside Valcourt, Quebec, Bombardier had quietly built one of the most credible motorcycle operations in North America. Its flagship brand, Can-Am, was not a commuter machine. It was a competition weapon, factory-prepared motocross bikes that were winning races across the United States, beating European machinery on American soil, and doing it with Canadian hands and Canadian engineering. At its peak, Can-Am holds the #1 sales position in the North American motocross market. American dealers are placing orders months in advance. Factory riders are carrying Can-Am logos onto podiums at AMA Nationals. The bikes are raw, light, technically sophisticated, and they win. In 1977, Can-Am machines take victories in some of the most prestigious off-road events in the world. For a nation that had never before been taken seriously as a manufacturer of performance motorcycles, this is not just a commercial achievement. It is a statement about what Canadian engineering can do when it is given the room to compete. But fast forward to 1984, and it is all gone. The factory is silent, the race team is disbanded. The dealers have cleared their inventory and are fielding calls from stranded owners who cannot find parts. The Japanese have taken everything that was left. Total collapse. Now there's a simple villain in this story. His name is Laurent Beaudoin, the man who controls Bombardier in 1984 and makes the call that ends it. But the truth is more complicated and more damning. Either way, what follows will become the most preventable industrial decision in Canadian history. To understand what was lost, you need to understand what Can-Am actually was. Valcourt, Quebec, is not a city. It is barely a town. Tucked into the eastern townships east of Montreal, it exists because of Bombardier, the way Meriden existed, because of Triumph. The factory dominates the landscape. The streets around it fill at shift change. The engineers who designed the rotary valve two-stroke engines that made Can-Am competitive are a tight-knit group who understand their machines at a molecular level. They grew up with these bikes. Their colleagues' children grow up with these bikes. The smell of premixed fuel and machined aluminum is as familiar to them as the cold Quebec winters that define the region. In 1973, Bombardier launches the Can-Am 175, a single-cylinder two-stroke motocross machine with a rotary valve induction system that its designers have developed in-house from first principles. This is the critical detail. Most rivals buy their engines from outside suppliers and tune them. Can-Am builds its own from the ground up. That distinction matters enormously. When something breaks, Can-Am engineers understand exactly why and can fix it. When the competition moves in a new direction, Can-Am can respond. When a rider comes back from a race with a specific complaint about power delivery in a particular rev range, the engineer who designed that rev range is 3 desks away and speaks French. The bike wins its first major race within 12 months of launch. By 1977, the Can-Am 250 MX2 is the machine that serious racers want. Not because it is the cheapest, not because it is the easiest to maintain, because in the hands of a capable rider, it is faster than almost anything else on the starting line. Gerrit Wolsink, one of the most respected motocross riders of the era, campaigns Can-Am machinery in Europe with results that shock the established factories. This is a small Canadian company from a town most Americans cannot find on a map, beating the Dutch, the Swedish, and the Germans at their own sport on their own continent. Back in Valcourt, the mechanics and engineers follow every result. The race program is not marketing to them. It is a direct line from the shop floor to the world's most demanding test environment. Every broken component that comes back from a race weekend tells them something specific. Every lap time improvement validates a design decision made months earlier at a drafting table in Quebec. Every championship point won in Europe is a number they can bring to the boardroom and point to. The feedback loop is fast, direct, and ruthless. It produces good motorcycles because the people making them are paying attention to the people riding them. What these men do not realize is that the threat to Can-Am is not coming from the competitors they are watching on the starting line. It is coming from the boardroom above them, and it has been gathering for years, but here is something I find genuinely troubling the deeper I look into this story. While the engineers at Can-Am are competing and winning, The corporate architecture above them is pulling in a completely different direction. Bombardier, in the mid-1970s, is not primarily a motorcycle company. It is a snowmobile company that has motorcycle ambitions. The distinction is critical. Snowmobiles are seasonal, weather-dependent, and vulnerable to the kind of warm winters that periodically devastate sales. Motorcycles offer year-round revenue across a geographically diverse market. The logic for building Can-Am makes sense on paper. But the corporate culture, the institutional priorities, the boardroom language, and the performance metrics of Bombardier are built entirely around the ski-doo. Motorcycles are outsiders in their own company. They always have been. When the oil crisis of 1973 devastates snowmobile sales across North America, Bombardier suffers badly. The company loses money in ways that shake the boardroom and force difficult conversations about which parts of the business are essential and which are optional. The motorcycle division, still small and still growing, suddenly has to justify its existence inside a company fighting for survival on its primary product. Resources that might have gone into Can-Am development are redirected. Projects are delayed. Engineers who wanted to develop a four-stroke platform for the growing trail bike market are told to wait. The waiting never quite ends. If you're finding this story as remarkable as I am, hit subscribe. There's a lot more industrial history on this channel that I think you will want to see. In 1978, Honda releases the CR250R Elsinore, and the Japanese response to Can-Am begins in earnest. By 1982, it has evolved into a machine that resets the entire motocross market. Yamaha follows with the YZ250, Kawasaki with the KX250. Suzuki brings its own factory program. The Japanese do not just produce competitive machinery, they produce it at an industrial scale, with dealer networks that blanket North America from Vancouver to Miami, with parts availability that makes weekend racers confident their bike will be ready for Sunday regardless of what happened on Saturday, with factory support programs that place their machines in the hands of the fastest riders in America and in front of the cameras of every major motorcycle publication. They study the Can-Am approach to engine design with the same methodical attention they brought to studying Triumph and BSA a decade earlier. They catalog every advantage, identify every weakness, and systematically engineer it around the advantages while exploiting the weaknesses. They do it with research and development budgets that dwarf anything Valcourt is spending. Honda alone employs more engineers in its motorcycle division than Can-Am employs people in its entire operation. The numbers are not even comparable. By 1980, the competitive window that Can-Am opened with its rotary valve technology is closing. Can-Am is still producing serious machines. The race results are still respectable. But the Japanese have closed the performance gap and are beginning to open a different kind of gap. One measured not in lap times, but in dealer confidence, parts support, and the invisible currency of brand reliability that builds over years of consistent performance. A rider who wins on a Can-Am knows he's on a fast bike. A rider who buys a Honda knows he'll be able to get a replacement piston in 3 days anywhere in North America. Both things matter. Only one of them is improving. The response from Valcourt should be a second generation of engines, a serious investment in the trail bike and enduro category where Can-Am has never properly competed and where the market is substantially larger than pure motocross. A dealer program that matches the Japanese in parts depth and support response times. Instead, the response is a series of internal debates about whether the motorcycle division makes strategic sense for a company whose primary identity remains the snowmobile and whose boardroom is populated by people who have never attended a motocross race in their lives. Inside the Bombardier boardroom in the early 1980s, the attitude toward the motorcycle program shifts from cautious support to active skepticism. The race results are still appearing in the press, but the sales numbers tell a different story. Can-Am's market share in the motocross segment is declining year over year as the Japanese manufacturers flood the market with machines that are good enough to win club races and cheap enough to be the obvious choice for any rider who is not already committed to the Can-Am brand. The dealer network that Bombardier has built for Can-Am is loyal but thin. A parts shortage can strand a rider for weeks in a way that simply does not happen with a Honda or a Yamaha. The engineers at Valcourt know exactly what is needed. They have drawn it up. A new engine architecture that moves beyond the aging rotary valve platform. Serious investment in the enduro and trail category, where the sales volumes are 3 times what motocross alone can deliver. a factory-backed race program in the United States, with the kind of budget that generates magazine coverage and dealer enthusiasm simultaneously. They make the case internally, they produce detailed proposals, they run the numbers honestly and show what a 5-year investment program would cost and what it would return. The numbers require a commitment that the Bombardier board, still managing the aftermath of the snowmobile crisis and operating in an increasingly difficult economic climate, is not prepared to make. Then 1982 arrives, and the global recession hits North American discretionary spending with devastating force. Motorcycle sales across the continent collapse by more than 30% in some segments. This is not a Can-Am problem. It is an industry problem that affects every manufacturer without exception. Honda suffers. Yamaha suffers. Kawasaki closes model lines and reduces production runs. But the Japanese manufacturers have the scale and the financial reserves to absorb 2 or 3 bad years and emerge intact on the other side. They can run losses in North America while their domestic Japanese market and their European operations carry the company. Can-Am does not have that option. For a small division of a company whose primary business is also struggling, 2 consecutive bad years are not a setback to be managed. They are an argument to be made in a boardroom by people who were never fully convinced in the first place. By 1983, Laurent Beaudoin is sitting across from a motorcycle division that is losing money in a recession while competing against manufacturers with 10 times its engineering budget and 50 times its dealer network. Beaudoin is not a motorcycle man. He is a businessman who came to Bombardier through family connection, having married into the founding family, and who has since proven himself a capable and ambitious corporate strategist. He understands balance sheets with genuine sophistication. He understands market positioning and long-term capital allocation. He understands that Bombardier's future is not in motocross bikes. He does not understand because he has never had reason to understand what a rotary valve induction system represents in terms of accumulated engineering knowledge, or what it means to the 40 men in Valcourt who built it. He looks at Can-Am and sees a red line that has been getting redder for 3 years. He has absolute authority over the future of Canada's only serious performance motorcycle manufacturer, and he has no particular reason to feel the weight of what he is about to end. The engineers and the race team are not consulted in any meaningful way. There is no period of structured review during which the people who actually understand the product and the market get to make the case for a different path. There is no independent assessment of what the brand might be worth under different ownership or different corporate structure. There is a corporate decision made at the senior level by people who measure value in quarterly returns and strategic fit. And that decision, once made, is final and irreversible almost immediately. In 1984, Bombardier announces it is ending motorcycle production. The Can-Am brand, the race program, the dealer network, the engineering team in Valcourt, all of it is wound down with the kind of corporate efficiency that treats the termination of 15 years of work as an administrative process to be completed on schedule and under budget. The people who find out first are not the engineers who built the machines. They are not the dealers across North America who have staked significant portions of their businesses on Can-Am parts availability and customer loyalty. They find out through industry channels, through rumors that move faster through a specialist market than any official announcement, through the particular silence of a corporate headquarters that stops returning calls. Men who have dedicated their professional lives to building competitive motorcycles from nothing, in a country where nobody believed it was possible, learn that their work is being terminated because it does not fit a corporate strategy built around a different machine on a different kind of ground. There is no public fight, no occupation of the Valcourt factory, no political intervention from members of parliament representing Eastern Township's constituencies, no protest from the racing community that had gathered around Can-Am results for a decade. The Can-Am story ends not with drama, but with paperwork, and with the particular silence of a community that has absorbed a blow and does not yet know what to do with it. The race program is wound down with professional courtesy. The remaining inventory of bikes and parts is sold through existing dealer channels at prices that move stock quickly and leave dealers with no reason to complain publicly. The factory is reassigned to other purposes within the Bombardier operation. The engineers disperse. Some find positions elsewhere in Canadian industry. Some move to the United States. Some, and this is the detail that still carries a particular sting, Find positions with Japanese manufacturers who are more than happy to employ engineers with deep expertise in high-performance two-stroke design. The knowledge that was built up over 15 years of racing and development leaves Canada quietly and permanently and never comes back. The American dealers who had built loyal customer bases around Can-Am machinery are left to manage the aftermath on their own. Parts availability drops immediately and falls to zero within 18 months. Riders who are mid-season on Can-Am machines face the practical problem of a competitive bike that is becoming impossible to support. Some switch to Japanese machines with the particular frustration of people who know their old bike was faster. Some become the kind of committed collectors who will spend 20 years tracking down spares through specialist networks and private sales. If you are finding value in this channel and want to see more stories like this, hit subscribe. There's a lot more where this came from. The Japanese manufacturers absorbed the vacated market share without ceremony and without acknowledgement. They are already taking it before the Can-Am announcement. The announcement simply removes the last serious North American competitor from a conversation that the Japanese were already winning. By 1986, the idea that a Canadian company once held the #1 position in North American motocross sounds to a casual observer like the kind of claim that needs verification. It recedes from common knowledge with remarkable speed because there is no institutional presence left to keep the memory active. What makes the Can-Am story different from the British motorcycle collapse of the same era is precisely this. Can-Am was not destroyed by the kind of catastrophic mismanagement that brought down BSA. It was not handed to a man who actively despised the product, the way NVT was handed to Dennis Poor. The engineering at Valcourt was sound at the moment the decision was made to end it. The race results were still coming. The product was still competitive in the hands of a rider who knew how to use it. What killed Can-Am was the decision to measure a motorcycle company by the standards of a snowmobile company and find it wanting by those standards. It is a subtler failure than what happened in Birmingham and Coventry, but in some ways a more frustrating one, because the outcome was not inevitable until the people with the authority to make it inevitable chose to do so. In 1987, 3 years after the last Can-Am rolls out of Valcourt, Bombardier acquires the rail division of Budd Company in the United States, beginning a transformation into the transportation infrastructure giant it is today. The company that could not justify the investment required to keep a motorcycle program competitive will go on to build subway cars for New York City, commuter trains for London, and regional jets for airlines across 4 continents. The pivot makes commercial sense of the most overwhelming kind. It makes billions of dollars of sense over decades, but in Valcourt, in the quiet of a factory that no longer smells of premix fuel, something is gone that cannot be recovered by any subsequent corporate success story. The accumulated knowledge of how to build a competitive motorcycle from first principles, how to develop an engine in-house and race it to victory against the best machinery in the world, how to build a dealer network around a specialist product in a market dominated by giants, all of that is dispersed and gone. You cannot buy it back. You can only start again, and starting again is not the same thing. The race bikes survive in the hands of collectors who understand exactly what they were. A Can-Am MX2 in race original condition from the late 1970s is not easy to find. And when one appears at an auction or an estate sale, it draws attention from people who know the history. The machines are remarkably well built for their era. The engines, when properly maintained by someone who understands them, still start with the urgency that made them dangerous on a motocross starting line in 1978. They are faster than many machines built decades later. They are the physical evidence of what was possible in Valcourt when the resources and the will existed simultaneously. The question that nobody in the Bombardier boardroom appears to have seriously sat with is what it means for a country to build its only credible performance motorcycle brand from nothing, reach the top of the market, and then simply stop. Not because the product has failed the market, not because the technology has been surpassed beyond recovery, not because the riders have stopped wanting the machine, but because a corporate strategy built around a different product in a different season has no room for it, and the people with the authority to make room choose not to. The riders who competed on those bikes knew what they had. The engineers who spent nights in the workshop understanding why a particular engine failed on lap 14 of a 45-minute moto knew what they had built. The dealers who watch their Can-Am customers come back weekend after weekend with the particular loyalty of people who have chosen a harder path and are proud of it, knew what they were selling. The people who made the final decision were the only ones in the building who did not, and that failure of understanding is the true cost of what ended in 1984.